Who is Dr. Destroyo?
Who is Dr. Destroyo?
Who is Dr. Destroyo?
Who is Dr. Destroyo?
Who is Dr.
Who is Dr. Destroyo? Who is Dr. Destroyo?
Who is Dr. Destroyo?
Who is Dr. Destroyo?
I am Dr. Destroyo. From the Death by Media Man podcast show, it's Dr. Destroyo. The story of the world's first true supervillain. We're telling Dr. Destroyo in sequence every 2 weeks. So if you haven't listened to the first episodes, go back and start there. Then, this will all make a lot more sense. Chapter 3. And we just kept talking about it, and we kept being good and high, and we kept being full of shit. And the idea kept growing between us. It was like a little lizard embryo, struggling to take on the shape that might someday break itself out from its egg. It was Tom who suggested that we could fake a mugging or an attack to get Mr. Scorpio's attention. Tom could pretend to assault me, and then Mr. Scorpio could come rescue me. You should have a weapon then, I considered. Like a knife. Just a knife? Or a sword, or something flashy like that. A sword is good, Tom agreed. I like a sword, but what kind? Samurai? Ninja? Broad? There's so many different types of bladed weapons, and they all project a different kind of image. I just want to make sure we're making the right decision. A laser sword would be cool. Cool, but a little fey. Beyond swords, there were guns. A pistol, a rifle, a shotgun, a submachine gun, a machine gun, or even a rocket launcher. How difficult do you think it would be to create a realistic-looking bazooka, I asked. Like out of paper mache and shit. Or maybe we could build a ray gun. Some weird laser beam blaster, like out of a science fiction movie? Yeah, like a high-voltage disintegration device. Or some sort of nuclear cannon. Yeah, a weapon that could tear the world to bits and pieces. Yeah, sure. Why not? Why not build something that could destroy the Earth? Why not go for glory and try to blow up the whole planet? Why dress up as simple thugs when we could be something so much more interesting? We could go in prepared. We could make costumes, invent characters, and challenge Mr. Scorpio to some kind of a showdown. And then we'd run off. Or Tom could threaten me and the rest of the city with a big cartoony bomb. And then again, we'd run off and laugh. That'd be great, Tom agreed. We could build like a crazy giant prop. I'd be all dressed up in some sort of full body costume with a mask and everything, down in some crackhead alley, threatening you with a death ray cannon. And then he'd rush down towards us and see that it was a fake gun. And then we'd take out a real gun and shoot him in the face, I concluded. Tom looked at me real funny for a moment, like he was suspicious and happy at the same time, and then he started laughing really hard. That would be so dumb, my roommate exclaimed happily, filling up the bong as we chuckled away at our own hilarity. Yeah, we had a bong, but it wasn't anything special. We didn't give it a clever name, and we didn't say clever shit while we smoked from it. In movies and television shows, people are always giving their bongs stupid names like Billy Bong Thornton or King Bong, the Bob Bong, Bongula. Our bong was called the Bong, and it was a dark green plastic tube filled halfway with water through which we filtered marijuana smoke for the purpose of inhalation. For all the dumb shit we like to think about, we collectively refuse to think of a dumb shit name for our primary smoking device. It just seemed a little too cliche. It would be a lot of work, but I can see how it'd totally be worth it, Tom continued. Just for that one shot. A nice clear image of the guy in his costume, stretched out across the blood-soaked concrete. The cops would try to keep it quiet, but somebody would get a real good photo. We could get the photo, I put in. We could totally take the photo ourselves, Tom agreed, and then just release it to the cops or the newspapers or whoever. I mean, at that point, we would be supervillains, so we could totally do crazy shit like that. Or at least we'd be villains anyway. The super we could always work on over time. Well, at that point, we would have killed a masked superhero, and that should still be worth more points than a regular person, I mused. It's like when you kill an ambulance driver in a video game, it still gets you in the same trouble you'd get in for killing a cop. Costume vigilantes should also count for double points or something, even if they're not like meta-humans. The whole thing is pretty damn meta. It's a postmodern post-mortem, I put in. A self-aware assassination of reality by art. The end of somebody's real life in the midst of imitating fiction. It'd be like capturing something that had previously only existed as an idea for the one fleeting moment in which the dream had become a reality. The dream of the meta-myth man. The dream of the death of the Superman. It's actually quite intense because it sort of glorifies the human spirit to kill a superhero. It's like slaying a god or a myth. Yeah, like it raises the stature of our entire species to destroy something greater than ourselves. We talk like that for hours on into the night. Chapter 4. We had to wonder, who was Mr. Scorpio? As near as I could tell from researching online, he was a tall, muscular man in his mid-20s. Given the mask and his propensity for only coming out at night, it was hard to even be sure of his ethnicity. In interviews, he said he'd started looking for ways to help prevent street violence after he'd seen a guy getting knifed outside of some downtown nightclub. Mr. Scorpio said the guy had bled to death while a whole crowd of people just watched, doing nothing. Mr. Scorpio said that, after that, he began going out at night, trying to break up fights when he saw them happening. He was just trying to help people. He said as much in all the interviews he'd love to give.
This was back before I was wearing the costume, and I started getting known around the city as a guy who was trying to help folks, and it was getting kind of weird. Like people wanted to know who I was, where I lived. Also, I'd been personally threatened a couple of times. Nothing too dangerous, but bad enough that it got me thinking very seriously about how I might better protect myself.
Mr. Scorpio's costume was detailed with long lines of purple leather along its seams and edges, and the black rubber on the outside of the torso had been shaped to give the impression of a powerful chest and abdominal muscles. The outfit wouldn't stop a bullet, but it could slow down a blade, and under certain circumstances, such as a drunken street brawl, it might make the difference between life and death. The real reason for the suit, Mr. Scorpio claimed, was that it psychologically disarmed situations. It made people stop what they were doing and maybe laugh, or at least focus more on him, rather than on their original conflict. He stopped a lot of fights, he said, without ever having to resort to anything physical. He'd just show up and chill things out by being a guy in a funny suit. That might have been part of what really caught me. His assertion that he wasn't wearing the mask just to protect his identity. He was doing it because it aided him with what he really wanted to do, which was stopping people from hurting each other. He was like a strange sort of clown for grown-ups. A rodeo clown for the macho bullfights of the club scene. There was something about how he defined himself which made Mr. Scorpio's whole costumed crime fighter thing seem a little less laughable. Mr. Scorpio portrayed himself somehow, as a bit less like a neurotic nerd who was living out a fantasy life on the streets of the real world, and a bit more like a regular person who was just trying to help people while living an irregular life. So maybe that's why Tom and I kept talking about him. About the idea of these costumed crime fighters lurking in our own city. Because after hearing him talk, Mr. Scorpio didn't seem quite as pathetic and laughable as the idea of a real-world costume crime-fighting hero had initially seemed. There's a part of me that really digs it, I have to admit, I said. I mean, I don't know that I support it, but I'm fucking fascinated by it all. Of course you are, Tom exhaled through a cloud of smoke. The guy's a living artistic statement in motion. He's transmeta, which is to say midway in his transformation into something greater and larger than himself. He's a pre-op super vestite. It sounds kind of kinky when you put it that way. Seriously though, Tom told me, if you want to help this guy, you know what you should do? Get some tights and find out if he wants a sidekick? You should kill him off. I grinned at Tom and he grinned back at me. We couldn't seem to get away from that idea. I'm serious, he went on. And this time I'm talking about doing it to help him, not just for your own sick little art project. More evil grinning. But for real, man, you want to give this guy his glowing ring, his magic word that calls down the cosmic lightning? Then he's gotta die. That's what the hero needs to pass from our world, Tom's hands flickered like a bird in flight, to the world beyond. It'd be like sparking the fire, I went on, continuing the premise. A whole Prometheus thing, helping the mortal transcend this state of being and move on to a higher existence. He's like a little organism trapped within the limitations of itself, trapped within the idea of itself, like a fish that can't grow any larger than the tank it's in. And he needs to be set free, Tom suggested. The man needs to die so he can become something more than just what he is. He can become an idea, a myth, a legend, coming soon to a reality near you. Conversationally, we were stealing intonations from bad movie trailer voiceovers. In a world without hope, in a city without pity, one man has the courage to be the hero of a generation. The kind of simple-minded pap used to sell cheap popcorn, watered-down soda, and other forms of overpriced junk food. Besides, I added, you couldn't just kill his parents or his homeworld. This guy's an adult. He needs the sort of super origin you give an adult. Toxic chemicals, giant explosions. Like you said, the death experience. Something a normal man couldn't come back from. You got it. We start out with... Tom lowered his voice even more dramatically. An event which would have killed an ordinary man. Instead, turn this guy into something more than human. And then we build from there. Dr. Destroyo is written and produced by Hank Pattison for the Death by Media Man podcast channel. You can subscribe to the Death by Media Man podcast on iTunes and SoundCloud. If you enjoyed this, please leave us a like or a comment and tell a friend. And if you'd like to support the Death by Media Man channel with your money, there's a link to our Patreon in the description of this program. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you in 2 weeks for the next installment of Dr. Destroyo.